Being a villain is what's popular in culture now. Ever since Aaron decided to be a bad boy and destroy the world, there are tons of people who justify becoming a villain because they believe that the outcome will be beneficial to them in some type of way. The reality is, the villain arc won't save you. I don't blame people for wanting to try and become the villain. Honestly, some anime and shows make being a villain really cool. I mean, villains mostly in the anime are given a backstory that doesn't necessarily justify their villainous intent, but gives you an inside scoop of their life in the past and why they decided to go the other way. This may be due to being treated bad by a village, betrayed by a friend, wanting to get revenge on another person for various different reasons. And some people you just see and they are just crazy and don't really need a backstory because their backstory is just them being villainous. But the weird thing is, people aren't attracted to the villain. They're attracted to the anti-villain. The anti-villain seeks to get what they want in maybe cruel and unjust ways that will most likely have the protagonist see them as a villain because of the way things are done. I've seen so many memes and content of people wanting to be villains for various different reasons. Maybe it's because a lot of people around them doubt them, so they have to change in order to prove them wrong. Maybe they're tired of being hurt by people, so in order to get the upper hand, they have to become the villain. Maybe they feel as though that women have been treating men terribly, and they're tired of being played, so they decide to become the villain because they think it'll get them some type of play, i.e. becoming your red pillar. Maybe you as a woman think all men are terrible because the men in your past played games and you decided to become a villain and you got to do the hot girl summer. I don't know the reason why people are attracted to the villain arc. I know when I was younger, I believe maybe because of my own insecurities that girls always went for the bad boys. Dudes who didn't mind being a little rebellious, right? Like the dudes who were the coolest in high school or were mean to people who they felt were beneath them. The villain seems attractive because to us, going against the grain is something people aren't used to. And if done right, it can pay off really, really well in this life. But at what cost? What are you willing to sacrifice to become a villain or have a villain arc? Because the villain has to sacrifice relationships, morals, even his own wants and needs for what they ultimately desire. And what does actually having a villain arc mean to you? Is having a villain arc just being a jerk to people all the time? Is being a villain breaking as many guys and girls' hearts and not caring because someone broke yours in the past? Is being the villain an opportunity for you to allow the world to experience the same pain you went through? If you want to become a villain to like kind of get girls or think that it'll make girls like you, maybe it might work, but you can be nice and still be a marketable catch. Like, the internet has become such a small place that we think that if we're jerks to women, if we degrade them, my guy, you are not going to get the girl you want by becoming a villain. Just, that's a side note. I don't know your reasoning, but I feel like the villain arc is a contradiction. And you want to know why? Because in all the stories, the villain never wins. He never fulfills his plans. They never get what they want because they're so blinded by their misguided goals that they can't see what they're doing is ultimately wrong and that they won't work. The hero always wins. That's at the heart of every single story, which is bad news for the people who want to try and become a villain for a season. You go ahead and do what you want. See where it will get you. And I bet being the villain isn't as cool as you thought it would be. You probably thought that being a villain would make great things flock to you. And that may be the case, but you can still be empty. You can be like these red pill guys and think that being the villain, being the bad guy who gets the most money, that sleeps with tons of girls or men and the biggest muscles. But at the end of the day, this vain advice of villainy will fail you. But that's also good news because the reality of this life is that we're all villains in the story. As a Christian, I believe that we were made for God and to be in relationship with Him. But we decided to go our own way, not wanting God, but wanting to be God's, becoming the villain, wanting our own ways, establishing our kingdom that will ultimately lead us down a destructive path. But you know what? God said He didn't want that for us. So He sent His Son Jesus to live the perfect life that me and you cannot live. He did everything that we were supposed to do. As perfect as He was, He went to the cross to die a villain's death so that we didn't have to. Jesus died for the villain. Romans 5:10 says this, "For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his son, much more now that we are reconciled shall we be saved by his life." One of the most mind-blowing passages in the gospel story is when Pilate brings before the Jewish people Barabbas and Jesus, and he asks them who they want to be free, and they scream Barabbas. Now, what's crazy is that Barabbas was a villain. Like, he was someone who went to prison for murder, robbery, and starting an insurrection. This dude was the real deal, but he was freed and Jesus took his place. What baffled me about this story is that why would a good religious people decide to free a innocent man in spite of someone who wasn't innocent, who was guilty of murder and starting insurrection and being the bad guy? Why would they deliver over this good person for this bad person? Good news is that Jesus, being God, willingly laid down his life so that you and I could not have to face the punishment that we are well deserving of for being sinful people. Friend, you and I are Barabbas. The reality is that we are all living this villain arc, but Jesus came to save us from the villain arc, not to become heroes of the story, but to love and be loved by the ultimate hero. And through him, we can live a life that actually leads to joy and peace found in Jesus. So if you think you'll get all you want from the villain arc, you're sadly mistaken, my friend, because being the villain never amounts to anything good. If you think that being the villain is going to liberate you in some type of way, you're going to be found being oppressed by a cruel slave master. I think this plays out well in the character of Aaron, because with the reality of him trying to free his people, he himself became a slave and a villain, which is a sucky spot for him to be in, because now he just turns the whole world against him. You even have his friends and comrades that obviously think he's in the wrong. So in order for him to be free, he isolates himself to his own ways, and the reality is Aaron isn't doing anyone any favors. And as the villain of the story, villains need to be stopped, which, to be honest, I don't think there's a happy ending for Aaron anyway. You don't have to be like Aaron. Trying to pursue a villain arc is kind of weird. You don't have to put on this fake facade of being the bad boy until you get whatever you want. Be kind, be loving, work hard, but most importantly, follow Jesus. Give your life to him, because he saves villains. See ya.